All right, fantastic. Awesome. Thank you, Ron. I want to welcome everybody to the fourth Space Education Summit. Really excited to have everyone here this morning for our astronaut panel. We've got 4 sessions of breakout topics over the next several hours and a fireside chat to end the day. I'm going to go ahead. I'm Mark Wagner, by the way. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ron Rosano here, and Gitika Gorthy, who I'll introduce a little bit more in a moment, and Anahita Nizami have organized the event with me. And we want to say thank you to everybody who has shown up and everybody who has been a part of making this happen, and everyone who's going to present and collaborate and participate today. So welcome. I always like to start with it for the folks who are joining us for the first time, and perhaps this is the first such event that you've been at. I always like to start with a little bit of background information, actually, on something called the overview effect. Our friend Frank White, who is going to be part of our fireside chat at the end of the event, wrote a book in 1987 capturing his thoughts on what he had discovered interviewing dozens of people who had been to space. He's continued interviewing people who have gone to space over the intervening decades. The book is on its 4th edition right now. But what he finds is for many, many people that experience space travel, they have an experience where they look back at the Earth and they have a change in consciousness when they look down and they don't see borders and they don't see tribes. They see that we're all in this together. As crew on spaceship Earth hurtling through the void. And this is sort of change of consciousness, a change in a way of being when they come back to the Earth. It tends to lead to more environmental efforts and diplomatic efforts, as they see that sort of a lot of the conflict that happens down here looks pretty pointless from up there. So I always like to kind of share that bit of vocabulary, that when we were talking about experiencing the overview effect from orbit, that's what we're talking about. And we've got 3 people on the call today who have been to space and looked down on the Earth. So it's going to be really exciting to get their perspective on that. I also want to take just a moment and thank our various partners who have helped us put together and promote this event. Earthscape VR gives a great VR experience of the Earth. Aries Learning is my company. We help students and teachers prepare for the growing space economy and humanity's multi-planet future. And I don't think I should try to talk through each of these off the top of my head, but we really want to thank the Aldrin Family Foundation, Ignited Thinkers, Gitika, Club for the Future, Space Foundation, Celestial Citizen, and of course the Human Space Program, who's co-produced the event with us for some time now. So let me introduce a little bit more fully my fellow organizers. My co-host Gitika Gorthy here is the founder and CEO of Ignited Thinkers. Gitika is a sophomore attending Columbia University in the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. She's also an aspiring aerospace physician and medical researcher. So super stoked to have Gitika with us. Fantastic to have her as a co-host this morning. Gitika, do you want to say a few words before I introduce Ron?
Yeah, and first of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be a co-organizer. As a student, being able to share my perspective on what I think the future of space will look like, what it looks like right now, and what we can do to continue empowering students to get involved in interdisciplinary space careers is something I'm incredibly passionate about. So I'm very excited for this event and to be able to continue sharing a little bit more about my passion for space and hopefully getting a few others excited about space exploration as well. So thank you.
And if you're interested in similar content and great interviews, head over to Ignited Thinkers website, because Gitika's got a fantastic YouTube series there. And perhaps one of us can drop that in the chat. I also want to introduce our co-host, Ron Rosano, who's been pursuing his passion for inspiring students about space travel for over 25 years. He's an informal astronomy and spaceflight educator with several different programs, and he just flew to space with Virgin Galactic last month. So Ron is hosting this giant Zoom meeting. So thank you to Ron for having us and recording it.
Oh, thanks. Great to be with you all, and thanks all for joining. Yeah, it's an exciting time for commercial space flight. You know, for the first time, people all over the world can buy tickets to go to space, and I'm just feel very lucky to have been a part of that, and looking forward to sharing a little more about what that's about. And I'll let you go from there. Thanks, Mark.
Sure thing. Yep. I will also introduce, although she's not able to be with us to kick off the day, Dr. Anahita Nizami is a author, researcher, and entrepreneur, as well as a lecturer at Kepler Space Institute. And she's a chartered psychologist, providing consultation, training, and therapy. She's still a practicing psychologist. And she's also the founder of Earthscape VR. So encourage you guys to go check that out as well. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. Enough about us. Let's talk about you guys. So stoked to see everybody here. It looks like we've got just over 100 participants. Definitely want you guys using the text chat. This can be a really interactive sort of opening panel if you guys participate there. Feel free to use the raise hand feature, especially when we're all in the big room here when we get to the Q&A. We'll likely ask you guys to unmute or share when it's your turn to ask a question. And if you need any help, just drop it in the chat. You can also use the help feature. I think that'll send a message directly to Ron, but you can message Ron or Gitika or I, or just ask for help in the chat, and we'll be off to the races. If there are any questions, pop that in now. Otherwise, we will go ahead and get started. Awesome. So I want to introduce our panel, and then I'll actually put the slides away so you all can see them much larger. And Ron, maybe we can be on speaker view since you've got the recording happening over there. But in order to quickly introduce these folks, Nicole Stott, maybe you can wave. Nicole is a veteran NASA astronaut. She's been a part of 2 shuttle missions, as you can see, and 2 ISS expeditions. She is an author of the book Back to Earth, which comes highly recommended, and co-founder of the Space for Art Foundation, which is uniting a planetary community of children through the awe and wonder of space exploration and the healing power of art. Well, you know what else I have here? I'm reading this book about awe right now at Ruben Salinas' suggestion, and that there's a lot of synchronicity between your book and this. And one of the things I like most about this particular panel is all 3 of our panelists, in addition to having been to space, run space education foundations. So super stoked to have you guys here for this day. Sharon Hagel, in the blue jumpsuit there, Sharon might want to wave too, is a commercial space pioneer, having flown on Blue Origin's NS-20 flight in March 2022. She is also the founder of Space Kids Global, which is inspiring elementary students in STEAM education by making space a possibility for kids everywhere. So I hope you guys will all tell us quite a bit about your missions and your organizations as we get into the questions too. And then finally, our co-host, Ron Rosano. Ron and I have hosted astronaut panels for several years together now, and it's just fantastic that Ron gets to be on the panel this time, having just flown to space last month. So he flew with the Virgin Galactic 04 mission a month ago, after spending the previous decade promoting decades promoting space education through Galactic Unite and other programs, hosting space chats, connecting kids in classrooms with employees and astronauts and future astronauts all around the world. So Ron, really stoked to have you today on the panel side of things. So Gitika and I will get this kicked off. We've got a handful of questions for the panel. We'll let them each answer, and then we will roll to the Q&A. So I want to start by asking you guys, what lit your fire? What got you inspired to go to space? I'm going to turn off the slides here, so any of you can jump in. Any of the 3 of you jump in and share what lit your fire, what inspired you to go to space.
I'll start.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah, sure. Flying, I think, in short, flying. Very thankful to my parents for sharing what they loved with me. That's where I, through my mom, got introduced to some of the artsy side of things, but through my dad, who loved to build and fly small airplanes. As a kid, we were hanging out at the airport all the time and got to hang around flying people and flying machines and, get off the ground a little bit, as a kid growing up, and really, really loved it and wanted to fly. But I think even more than that, wanted to know how things fly. And, so it just kind of evolved. Wanted to know how things fly. If you want to know how airplanes fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? I was graduating college after studying aeronautical engineering for wanting to know how things fly. at a time when the shuttle program was going to get back up and running post Challenger. Got a job out there working on the, on the space shuttle, and then ultimately on the space station build. And through that, got to see what astronauts really do. And I think that's what, the flying was this like curiosity, this really excitement that led me down this path of what I studied and what I wanted to do for work. But astronaut seemed like one of those things that, oh, that's something other special people get to do. Why would they pick me? From the time I watched the moon landing as a kid, I knew this was an extraordinary thing, but why anything I had done would stand out to them? And so I kind of discounted it as not being possible. But as I started to see what astronauts really do, where 99.9% of an astronaut's time is not flying in space, it's here on Earth, doing all kinds of things that, oh, by the way, seemed like they were a lot like what I was doing as a NASA engineer. And that encouraged me to reach out to some mentors who just very simply encouraged me to do the one thing I had control of in the whole process, which was to pick up the pen and fill out the application. I am very thankful to them for that. And that in combination with discovering that astronaut is not really all about the adventure side of it, right? It's not, don't get me wrong, I highly recommend it. If you could launch on a space shuttle, I'd say go do it, fly on a, but it's really ultimately about the work we're doing there, right? And as I started to discover that everything we're doing there is ultimately about improving life on Earth, that's what really lit the fire for me. The wanting to fly, what the mission of all that was, and having some people that believed in me just encouraged me to pick up the pen. That's how it all got started for me. Yeah.
Boy, that's a great place to start. Thanks, Nicole, for sharing your story. And yeah, go for it, Sharon.
Mine was a little different. I'm now sharing some things. I was in the 6th grade, listening on a PA system as they announced that Alan Shepard had become the first American to go into space. And that was in 1961. And, West Virginia is a long way away from KSC. I never dreamed that I'd have an opportunity, much less be launched into space. And it wasn't until Richard Branson gave us the opportunity to really live through his dreams. Of course, it helped once I got to Florida, because being here in Orlando, we have a front row seat of everything that's happening right down the street. So that always puts a lot of excitement in it. But I'm really excited about this opportunity. I think this is probably the first time, you correct me, Nicole, that you have 3 different space vehicles and 3 different companies with astronauts that have had this amazing experience to look back on Earth.
It sure seems likely, yeah.
Yeah, there's more and more ways to get to space, which is fabulous. Whether it's, now that the shuttle's retired, that seemed like a unfortunate thing, but that seems like it opened up doors. NASA developed the commercial space, and now Dragon's flying, Boeing's going to be flying, and now suborbital options with Blue, Origin, and Virgin Galactic. It's just thinking about the number of people that might fly on these suborbital flights next year. They could have as many as like 40 or 50 people fly between the 2 companies. And, so far in history, there's about 670 people that have been to space. So they're adding to that, even though it's not an orbital flight and you don't get the, the same kind of feeling. But it's still strong, and it's still striking. It's still transformative to see the Earth. And I think it's great. The more people get up there and have that view, the better.
But before we go on to Gitika's question, Ron, what lit your fire? What got you interested in space?
Yeah, so I've I was fascinated with space from as long as I can remember, looking up at the stars at age 6 or 7, and then watching the Apollo moon landings, and being able to walk outside and look at the moon when I was 9 or 10 years old, and thinking that, wow, there's 2 guys walking around up there, really just made me more and more curious, and has driven me all my life really to learn more about it. Followed NASA missions, and never expected to be able to go to space until Virgin Galactic came along in 2004 and Richard Branson said, "Hey, we're going to build a bigger version of this." So yeah, it's been with me all my life.
Awesome. Well, let me hand it over to Gitika, because it's a pretty good transition to our next question.
Yeah, and I have to preface before I even ask the next question that each of you on this panel like incredibly inspire me, and I'm sure everyone who's listening on this call today with each of your journeys. And I think something that's common is space excited all of us, and especially what Nicole said, I think stuck out to me when she said at first she didn't believe she could be an astronaut. She didn't think it was realistic. And I think that's a statement a lot of people can agree with even today. I was in a similar boat. I didn't think, oh, I could be a rocket scientist. And I think there's some small moments, whether it be a teacher who believes in us or a club that sparks our interest in rocketry, that gives us a confidence to believe we can pursue a space career. So I think the fact that you've taken it forward and become astronauts officially, I think it's incredible. And now that you've all been to space, my next question for you is, what insights did you take away from going to space? What was the experience like, and how has it changed what you do here on Earth? Anybody can take up the question. It's a tough one.
You got to point at us, Gitika. We're all going to say.
Maybe Sharon can start us off this time.
Oh, what was it like? Oh my God, it was the most emotional and spiritual journey I have ever had in my entire life. I didn't realize how emotional space can be. And once we were up, I think we went 66.29 miles above the Earth. And as you look back, you realize how small we are and how fragile that atmosphere is. And it, Nicole, you guys probably know, you get choked up. It's just so emotional. Even now, the trigger, just talking about it. But when you look down on Earth, it changes you, and you have a responsibility to come back to Earth and make it better. I think that was the most overwhelming experience I had at that time. And the most surprising was how dark it is. I mean, it is darker than any blackness that we have here on Earth. And that kind of took me by surprise.
Yeah, I had all those exact same things. It's like a sense of connecting to the Earth and seeing the planet. It looked enormous to me. And I know that just in the scale of the solar system, that Earth is very small compared to the larger planets and to the size of the solar system, but it looked enormous. And I was transfixed by the thin blue line of the atmosphere. It was a vivid, vibrant blue that seemed very alive. And I really got a sense of things within that atmosphere being interconnected and interdependent, and everything, just thinking that thin atmosphere keeps everything alive within it is shocking, and something that it's hard to get away from. So I thought initially that I don't think words could ever really fully describe the whole experience. So it's something that sits with you every day and grows.
It's great. Even through Zoom, we could see the emotion in your eyes.
Thanks. Yeah.
Both of you guys, I love it. I high five both of you, because I don't know if we ever talked about this before you flew, but I am so thankful to have watched both of you on your flights, and that, yeah, you got to get out of your seat and, do a flip or, feel what it's like to float. But the fact that you both spent the majority of your time floating up, face in the window, I was so happy to see that, because that's what, and when you've got 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever, that is where you should be. I mean, I personally believe the whole, time I was in space, if I could have done nothing else, my face would have been floating in front of the window. And I I found out early in the flight that I had to, I mean, there's something very transcendent about it. It like sucks you in, and it's not just a visual thing. It's a very like soul-based kind of immersive thing, very meditative kind of experience that I ended up having. If I went to the window during the day, I would have to set my alarm to remind myself, okay, this is just a quick stop, on the way to your next task that you're doing or whatever, because you could get so like just immersed in it that a full 90-minute orbit could go by, and then I'd be hearing, Nikki, are you going to do any work today, over the intercom or something. But it's incredible, and it's overwhelming. I mean, I think a little bit of what I'm getting from you guys is this sense of being overwhelmed by it, by that blackness, by that color, by the size, by the veil thin blue line. It is I get goosebumps thinking about it. It's a really like humanly overwhelming kind of experience. And I don't know, I think we all talk to people before we do this, people that have done it before us, and try to get some sense of what it's going to be like. But I don't think anything really prepares you for and it's like anything where you go and experience it yourself. But our friend Ron Guerin always shares this idea of not needing to go to space to feel that though either, right? To appreciate this sense of awe and wonder that's around us every day. And I think that's where I come back to is like, man, got to go do the space flight experience. It's a really complex thing to do, right? Just to get off the planet, however we've done it, to get out of that hold of gravity, to live and work there for even a short period of time, to get back to Earth safely, the science, all of what has to go into it. And yet now, in hindsight, I'm like, man, it's the simple things that really, really resonate with me. The shock and wonder of how much I'm in this place, that I had the experience to do that. And being like, from the very beginning, like, wow, we live on a planet. I mean, the statement of the obvious, we all know that, but it's like, holy moly, we live on a planet. We are all Earthlings. Only border that matters is what you said, that very thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. And how that just drives this need, this acknowledgement of the fact that one of our most, if not most important.
Uh-oh. I got a bad feeling we lost Nicole. She was having a sketchy connection there for a little bit.
Mark, if I could add, when I received the news that we were going to be on Blue Origin NS-20, we were so excited, because can you imagine having the opportunity to go to space and seeing all this with your own eyes, but then to have your best friend, your husband, there with you, because it's just so overwhelming. All this stuff you see, there's no way you can come back to Earth and explain it. I know each of you guys have had the same thing. People would say, how is it? And you go, there's just no words to explain what we've seen. And so for Mark and I to become the first married couple to be launched on a commercial vehicle became very important, because we were able to share the stories.
That's great. I'll share this one image from the window. I just wanted to illustrate the atmosphere and that blue line. It's you just don't sense that at all from the ground. And coming back now, I'm not seeing the sky in the same way that I've always seen it. I'm looking out and seeing the sky now. It's like I'm thinking of it. Oh, I know that there's a lid to it, that it ends. Not that far. You're even at 40 miles, you're above 99.99% of the atmosphere. So it's not that far. People have joked, say, hey, I hope you got miles on your flight. I said, yeah, it would be nice, but I didn't know we weren't really that far. So we are in space. We're all in space on this spaceship Earth. And it's important, I think, for all of us to keep that in mind and to have a sense of that. And that's what I'm going to be focused on now, is sharing that.
Yeah, and just for emphasizing the last part of the question is like that experience I can see was very overwhelming. It was breathtaking. You're still thinking about it, and I can see the emotion in both of your eyes when you're speaking about it. What would you like to do differently now that you're back on Earth with the work that you're doing with education and outreach? Why do you think it's important to talk about your experience when you're inspiring the next generation? How did this experience change your work?
I'll just say one thing. I think that from on a day-to-day basis, as a human, you need food, water, shelter, sleep. You don't really have to think about Earth as a planet or have a realization that we're floating in space. And it's a very, very unique existence, the planet itself and us on the planet. But for the long-term survivability of humans, we need to know that we're in space and that it's a fragile planet. It's a thin atmosphere. You can see that things on one side of the planet affect the entire planet. And my mission now that I've flown is really to share that view and think about overview effect. And like Nicole was saying, you don't have to be in orbit to have orbital perspective. Is Ron Guerin's thinking, and I agree completely. So I'm excited to have flown, but I'm excited. I'm as excited to have dozens, hundreds, thousands more people fly, in the next year, and we could have a very different landscape. We probably will have a very different landscape for space flight, I think, in the next 5, 7, 10 years. So I think anyone out there, especially students under 20, you'll have a chance to fly in space way sooner than I did at age 63. And I think that goes for anyone in their 30s, 40s as well. So really excited for
that. Sharon, did you have anything to add before I move on to the next question, or?
Yes, I think it's very important that we prepare the younger students. It was Dr. Michio Kaku who said, if you don't have kids hooked in math and science by 6 and 7, you're going to lose them, particularly today with the way technology is changing so quickly. With Space Kids Global, we're a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to get kids excited about STEAM plus environment education, ensuring that girls are equally represented in the space industry. What we're learning from the kids is that young kids think that the only job in the space industry is an astronaut. And yes, that's very exciting. You learn, you train. But what we need to show them is that everything that we have here on Earth, we're going to need up there, including physicians, farmers, scientists, chefs. All these people play a part because space is for everyone. Unfortunately, as I was reading the International Educational Index, which is really why I started Space Kids, was that where the US used to be in the top for these subjects, we are now 38th in math, 41 in science. And to date, there are 3.5 million vacancies in the STEM field that are predicted by 2025. And if we don't get these kids excited and really wanting to learn more about space, then we're going to miss the boat. Up to this point, we have their attention by giving them hands-on projects. Like the essay, we sent 21 science projects to the ISS last year. We've got new projects coming up. So we've got their attention. We need to keep them engaged. Fortunately, this year, with podcasts like what you have here, we have now reached 614,894 kids, adults across the world. And we're so excited to be able to make them participators for the younger kids, not spectators. And the key is making learning fun again.
That's amazing. And I think that's a perfect statement. I love to think of space as its like own little world. So like as you said, every career you're going to need here on a daily basis on Earth, you're going to need in space, now and in the future. And getting these students to even think about interdisciplinary space careers is so important. I, for the longest time, thought the only way to get into the space sector was to be an aerospace engineer. I didn't even think about space policy or space economy. And when I share about my interest in space medicine, a lot of my teachers kind of look at me like, is that a real career? So there's definitely a long way we need to go in educating educators as well as teachers, students about the opportunities that exist in this field and how they're continuing to grow. I think the work that Space Kids Global is doing is so critical, and every educator is incredibly important. And in your journey, I have to ask for the panelists, if you could go back in time and give these younger students or give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Ooh. Being different is a gift.
That's a great one, Sharon. Yeah, embrace that. Embrace your uniqueness, and recognize that you can contribute in any number of ways. Yeah, a lot of I think for a lot of students just to believe that you can do most anything you want. Find something. A lot of students ask me, what does it take to be an astronaut? Well, it's like, or go to space. And it's like, you never know. It's so many different things, really. Some of the best advice is to find something you really love and be ready to work really hard at being really good at it. And you'll never know where you'll end up. 20 years ago, all the people working for Virgin Galactic and all 800 of the people signed up had no idea that this opportunity would be here where it is now. And the same with Blue Origin. It's like they started 20 years ago, and the people that are flying to space did, a lot of them never felt they'd have that opportunity. So yeah, find something. I think for students, find something you're passionate about and stick with it. And if you want to be involved in space, like you're saying, there are any number of ways to be involved. Artists, photographers, network engineers, people that are building spaceships with their hands, that did like a 2-year trade degree after high school, not a full 4-year college, undergraduate, or graduate degree. People that are airframe and power plant mechanics that learn how to operate aircraft are operating spaceships now. And that's like a 2-year hands-on degree, after high school. So, any number of specialties out there. Virgin Galactic has a barista at Spaceport that makes drinks and coffee for people operating and building spaceships and people going to space. So, you could be connected in many, many ways.
Great advice. I see Nicole joined us from her phone. The question that we were just talking about right now was, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that advice be? Or if you could tell any young student right now a piece of advice, what would that be? I think you're on mute.
Unmute. There we go. Still fly her on a space shuttle, but she can't work her phone. Okay. I think the number one thing, based on my experience, would be to not second guess yourself, right? If there's something you're really excited about, if there's something you're inspired by, find the people that are doing those things and reach out to them, talk to them. Don't be the one that tells yourself no, right? Really, I'm so thankful for the mentors that I had that got me over that final hurdle of just believing that I should even be worthy enough to fill out the application, right? Or should consider that. I think it's a big deal. We do a lot of second guessing of ourselves, and we shouldn't do that. And I was listening to what Ron said. I totally agree. I mean, figure out what you love, leverage that, what you're curious about, and put yourself in a place where, whether that's what you're studying at school or the job you want to do later, that you're always using all of your talents, your whole brain, to be doing something good, something bigger than yourself. It's really, really important, I think, to think early about how you can be part of something bigger than yourself. Yeah.
That's amazing advice. I think I always, when I talk with younger students, if they have like a a crazy career that probably doesn't exist yet. I'm like, you can be the first person to do that. As long as you love to do it, you can do it. There's a place. And I think that's, incredible advice. And also I love to hear, like, the famous hockey player said this quote, which is, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which I think is so true. And you should never say no to yourself. Let someone else do that for you. So I think, as a student myself, I'll definitely take that advice to heart. And I'm sure everyone who's listening, regardless of their age, will as well. So thank you. And now I'll hand it back over to Mark.
Thanks, Gitika.
Well, I want to make sure Sharon had a chance to answer that if she had anything else to add.
Well, funny you should say. Guess yeah, special guest today. When you work with elementary school kids, you have to have a gig. So I just wanted to introduce you to Saba, our space dog. And as you can see, Blue Origin made him a flight suit that matches ours. And if you look at our mission patch, it has all kinds of little secret messages, not only about Saba representing my dog, but also all the dogs at Blue Origin and around the world. So take a look at that, but he wanted to say hello.
I suppose that's not to mention dog space pioneers who led the way for humans, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let me sort of we're gonna have a few minutes for Q&A. So if you folks want in the chat want to think about questions that you'd like to ask, you can actually start dropping those in the chat now, and perhaps we'll grab a couple out of there. But I have another question for the panelists to kind of bring it home: is how might educators best prepare students for humanity's future in space? To put a kind of a broad piece on it, but how can they prepare students for this growing space economy and for humanity's rapidly approaching multi-planet future?
Well, for one, I'd say, continue with those, same kinds of ideas. It's like, think big, be aware that there's, all kinds of opportunities, and, don't miss out on the part of the curriculum that deals with space and earth science. That's part of the next generation science standards, and this should all be included. And I'm not sure if all teachers are aware of that. Maybe they are or not. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I like that, Ron. I mean, I think that I personally believe that every subject could incorporate in one way or another space and art. Because I think both of those things really get us thinking about our future, right? How we creatively can think about our future, and whether it's a math class, a science class, a history class, I think it can be incorporated in some way. But I think underlying what you both said, it's like, I know it comes back to the lessons learned from even going to space, right? This, planet Earthlings, thin blue line thing, figuring out that we need to behave like crewmates, not passengers. I mean, I honestly believe that by doing that, we have the power to create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space. And if our kids are hearing that they have a role as crewmates on a planet that's their spaceship, I think they're going to go forward with a lot more positive attitude about things, a lot more ideas about how they can be part of the solution to some of the greatest planetary challenges we have. And that will help lift them up here on Earth, but also if they decide to be part of something that takes them off the planet as well, there'll always be this consideration for Earth as home and how we improve life for all of us, no matter where we are. And you said it, I think, Ron, and before I blanked out earlier on the screen here, this idea of getting up every day and reminding yourself, you were talking about it from the standpoint of looking up at the sky and seeing it differently, and how it's got a cap on it now. And I'm looking out the window right now at the sky. It looks like it goes on forever, yes. Right? But knowing, viscerally knowing that isn't the truth, that it doesn't go on forever. Our kids should know that. And every day they should wake up in the morning and their feet should hit the ground and they should be like, oh my God, I'm on a planet. I'm in space. I'm spinning at 1,000 miles an hour right now. I'm traveling around the sun at 67. Somebody can correct me, 67,000 miles an hour or something in this solar system, in this universe, with this veil, thin blue line of atmosphere wrapped around me. The only thing that's protecting me from that deadly vacuum of space. and not to take it down like this, "Ooh, we're all going to die," if that's not their thing. And then we don't need to do that for our kids, but we need them to be acknowledging who and where they are with all of us in space together. I think it's the greatest inspiration we can give to them.
Awesome. Great,
well-
passionate answer. Sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
No, sorry. When we talk to elementary school kids, the very first thing we talk about is we want you to be thinking, what is your mission? How can you make the world a better place? And how can you make a difference in the world? We also like them to be thinking about when they get this opportunity, whatever it is in your path, that you pay it forward. And I think once we instill those types of personality traits and starting that young, it will make a difference in the world.
Awesome. Well, I think we've got time for one or two questions from the participants, and one stood out to me, which I'll read in just a moment. But I want to drop in the links to each of your space education organizations, because that's a great place for teachers to go for support with the things you're talking about. So Space for Art Foundation and Space Kids Global and Galactic Unite, where Ron runs the space chats. If you guys grab those links and check out those organizations, lots of resources and opportunities for teachers and their students. I think it was Diana's question I saw above that stood out to me, and Ron or Getica, if you see others you want to dive into, we could do those next. But for Diana is asking, part one, do you believe we'll see boots on Mars before 2029? Everybody likes to hear the astronauts in space make their predictions, but perhaps more interestingly, if you could be the first boots on Mars, what would you want your legacy mission to be?
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think mine would be to go back to Earth, though, too. Legacy mission, that you go to Mars, put your boots on it, do something worthwhile there, and then find your way back to Earth as well. I know that's probably not what is being looked for there.
Yeah, maybe if I was younger, I'd consider Mars more seriously, but I like it here on Earth. It's pretty hostile there on Mars. I don't know if I'd go if I had the chance. But a legacy, yeah. I mean, like just sharing that sense of, our planet, our solar system, sun circling the galaxy and, galaxies moving through space. I just don't have a sense of it here on the ground and trying to share that.
We have a situation because we work hand in hand with Club for the Future and their postcard campaign. And I had a little 3-year-old that was really working on her postcard that she wanted to send to space. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, can you imagine 25 years from now? And she's on Mars and she's going through her junk drawer and she looks at it and she goes, oh, I remember when I made this, I was living on Earth then. I think that's a possibility now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
It's
first
so
time
cool
Mars is probably something similar. Sorry.
I mean, it really is. It's so cool to think about that. And, and that with the idea, like, the space station motto is off the Earth, for the Earth. And I think that's what I like to imagine the motto will continue to be going forward, wherever we're going in space, is that we're off the Earth, for the Earth. And at some point, sadly, 1 billion or so years from now, when the sun decides it doesn't like us anymore, it's going to take us out. But by that point, I'm hoping we are doing the Star Trek future thing, right? We're interplanetary, because at that point, Mars isn't going to be good for us either. But what we'll have to do, like you said, Ron, to go and live in Mars, I mean, we essentially are going to have to turn it into another spaceship, create our own life support system there, that just like on the space station, we're going to have to mimic as best we can what Earth does for us naturally. And even though that little 3-year-old might, end up taking on some of the characteristics because of the gravity or whatever is different on Mars, their bodies might change that way. I mean, we still have to provide the life support for ourselves as humans to be able to survive in that place. And it's really extraordinary to me to think about how we can do that. I mean, we've demonstrated it on our spaceships, all 3 ships that we flew on, the number one priority it had was to keep us alive. And It's just what Earth does for us naturally. And so I think that's what it comes back to all the time, is this idea of doing anything we're doing off the Earth, it needs to be for the Earth as well.
And I think one of the great changes and the opportunities here is that today it's people like you and me. It's your neighbors that have an opportunity to go, which is gathering more data for future spaces so that we can colonize off planet.
And something I'd quickly just like to add. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm just going to say something that really excites me about the thought of even trying to get to Mars and have humans go there is this technological innovation, the medical advancements we'll have to make to get there that will all come back to Earth. I think space gives us this creative area, creative space to be able to innovate and create and solve challenging problems that otherwise we may not even try to solve. And so it pushes us to think beyond what we normally would just be like going on with our daily life, but space gives us that challenge to explore. And I think that's what excites me most about Mars is the students now are going to have to answer some really challenging questions to get to Mars, to have humans go to Mars. And I'm just excited to see how that translates into advancing life here on Earth as well.
I'm just listening to this conversation. I'm enjoying imagining how astronauts' stories will change when we're not talking about the thin blue line on the massive planet below. We're talking about the pale blue dot that you have to pick out of the star field, isn't it? All right, I think we perhaps have time for one more question. Then I've got a few things I've got to say by way of follow-up and housekeeping before our first session. But Yazdani, if I'm close there, from Pakistan, it looks like. If you'd like to ask our last question, fire away. Oop. I hope you disappeared. You may have to unmute if you're still there.
Who doesn't?
Thank you, Mark. It's great to hear everyone here who's participating. It's more of a comment that I'd like to, and probably this could start a reaction of discussions, perhaps for later, instead of a question. So I put this in the chat as well, that I believe that we should also align space education with the concept of space society 5.0, because humanity, as we're moving out eventually to colonize, say, Mars or elsewhere, we really need to look into the societal evolution with AI and everything coming in. We're becoming so dependent on a lot of things, yet we need to work it out how us as humans, as we move out, theology and all the other subjects, they'll come and play one way or the other. So that really needs to be worked out as well, and be perhaps somehow coined in a way so that's it could be part of space education in general. Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. I love that people are looking ahead to things like this, and it's fun to see some of the other questions in the chat right now too. Graham, I think yours is particularly important. How do we make this a human venture, not just one reserved for a slim portion of people? And I think education is a big part of that. Well, any final thoughts from our panelists before I go on to switching gears here and getting people ready for the first breakout sessions?
Thank you very much. Oh, I want to say something if I can't. Yes?
Sure, quick.
All right, thank you very much. Well, here we are, many people from Asgardia, the space nation. And I feel so excited because all the things that you share with us are very interesting. And the education, as Mark Wagner says, for children is important because they are the future in space in the future. And for Asgardia, it's the same. We are not in this space. We are not thinking, I am in the space in 2 years or 1 decade. No, the children are the future, the conquerors, the pioneers in the space in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will, well, at this point, though, if our panelists have any final thoughts, it'd be great to hear from you before we switch gears.
I just want to thank you guys for including me today. I love all of what's going on. I love how, you know, you've acknowledged the organizations that we work with. I, a lot of time, get the question, like, how could anything you've done, you know, be better than flying in space? And it bothers me, that question, but the reason I share it is that I think we all need to be taking every experience we have and applying it to like Sharon says, that what is our next mission, right? And I honestly feel like I had the opportunity to fly in space so I could do, you know, the work we're doing now with the Space for Art Foundation and join in conversations like this, where ultimately it really ends up being all about reminding us who and where we all are in space together, and that we have a very important role as crewmates and not passengers here on Spaceship Earth. So thanks for doing these kinds of things. I love that. I think everyone that is on this call already recognizes their role as a crewmate, and it's that call to action that makes life better for all of us by accepting that role. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Mark. Stay tuned. Space Kids has got a lot of things in the pipeline. One particular thing is Mark and I are going back into space. We've got a crew and a mission, but we're taking elementary school kids, 8 lucky kids plus a parent. We'll have a drawing. So sign up if you have any of those little people. We'd love to meet them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, thank you both, and it's great to be able to share this. Like Nicole says, I think we all have this thinking and awareness of being crew on the planet, and the more we do to share that, the better.
Thanks, Ron. So fantastic to be here this day with you on the panel too. Thank you to all of our panelists. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one last time here, because I've got a couple of slides for everyone as we make the transition to the first breakout sessions, which will occur in about 15 minutes. And I want everyone to be able to get to the right place and get set up. So, but while we've got the large group here, I do want to point you guys toward a Facebook group that we launched in the spring after the previous iteration of this summit. So if you guys go to spaceeducator.net, you can join the Facebook group there. And if one of my co-hosts would be so kind as to throw it in the chat, that might be helpful too. I'll share it throughout the day as well. But a great place for you guys to share resources, ask questions, etc. When I've got relevant things, I try to drop them in there, and there's a few members that are pretty prolific. So want to invite you to join that Facebook group. It's just spaceeducator.net should redirect you right there. Also, last year I had the opportunity with the Space Prize Foundation to pull together a complete space education curriculum. So this is a free and open education resource. If you go to spaceeducation.org, that will redirect you to the online Flex book. And it's not just an intro to space science and the history of space exploration. It's much more ambitious. It's why is space important to people here on Earth? What's happening in the new space economy, and it gets into space philosophy issues like sustainability and governance and ethics, not to mention avoiding existential threats and perhaps achieving more aspirational goals like shepherding Earth life through the solar system and beyond. So I want to invite everyone to use both those resources. Spaceeducator.net is the community, and spaceeducation.org is the free and open curriculum. Also, I think our co-host Anahita Nizami is with us now, so I want to give a nod to her work with Frank White. Frank wrote the Overview Effect book that we mentioned earlier, and he has worked with Anahita to write a kid's book to communicate similar themes through story. So Star Sailor is available now. Also, my own book, which is a little bit more academic volume, which focuses on space education, is available as well, and was the basis for the curriculum I mentioned. Anahita, since you're with us, I gave the other organizers a minute to share a few words at the beginning. Do you want to share a couple of words with our attendees before we move on?
It's a pleasure to be here and to join everyone. Some people have returned from previous sessions, so it's great to see some familiar faces here. I'm Anahita. I'm one of the co-hosts and one of the founding members of this wonderful initiative. And as Mark mentioned, I'm also the author of Star Sailor, which is a children's book for kids between 7 to 11 who are interested in space exploration. But it's more than that. It's also about helping kids understand the overview effect, which is the experience that the astronauts have been talking about today when they see planet Earth from space. And also, as Nicole and Sharon and Ron have spoken about, the impact of that experience and how we can use it in a positive way. And so what we're trying to do is relay that to children. And I'd love to hear your feedback on the book, everyone here, the audience here.
Awesome. Thanks, Anahita. Great to have you with us. And recording sessions in room 2, I think.